Let's go. Time to grind, get inside your mind. Yeah, we working overtime. That's the only way to climb. We gon' make it in our prime. Signing on the dotted line, cashing checks left and right. That's the way I'm living life. I feel alive when I got a goal in sight. Chip away, I gotta fight. Ain't nobody else in sight. Man, I think I see the light. Yeah, that shit is so bright. Follow me, I got the guide. See you on the other side, son. Ain't nobody know what I've been through.
What is going on, everyone? And in this video, I'll be giving you my UFC Vegas 80 main card predictions for the upcoming event taking place this Saturday, October 7th, 2023 out of the UFC Apex. Grant Dawson will be taking on Bobby Green in the main event in a lightweight bout. Obviously, I think a lot of people are not really looking forward to this one. Questionable decision making. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, I guess they're just going with it. I guess they want to do these cards every week pretty much and just put out the, whether it's in the Apex and all that. It's not really necessary, but maybe they have just far too much talent to where they just got to get these guys fights. And that, is what it is. But regardless, like always, let's go ahead and jump right into it. In the first fight on the main card, we have Alexander Hernandez, 14-6, taking on Bill Algeo, 17-7, in a featherweight bout. So this is an interesting matchup because Alexander Hernandez, ever since he knocked out Beneil Dariush in his very first fight inside the UFC, he kind of had that hype behind him, but then slowly kind of just been up and down, hasn't been able to beat the top guys and stuck in there just fighting the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And in his last fight, he was able to get that victory over Jim Miller. 108 significant strikes landed to Jim Miller's 67. So he really was able to piece him up on the feet. Didn't really have to worry about the grappling in that one. Really was pretty much a stand-up fight, and then he wins via unanimous decision. So, I mean, it's a good win for him. I mean, it is against Jim Miller, who obviously, he's old. He's just trying to have as many fights as possible. So it's a decent win, but I think really to impress, you got to finish someone like Jim Miller to get to that next tier as far as who you're fighting. And then before that, he lost to Billy Quarantillo, KO in round number 2. Then he loses Renato Moicano, submission in round number 2. So not too good wins, losses for him, and got finished. Now, he does have really good wrestling. I think obviously he's not diving in for takedowns necessarily, but it's something that he might try to utilize against someone like Bill Algeo. So Algeo is going to really have to focus on probably defending the takedowns, and he has some takedowns to himself as well. So maybe it kind of counteracts. Maybe they get up against the fence a little bit, but no one's really like taking anyone down. But I still think Algeo probably will be the one not trying to get the grappling going unless he can, unless he's able to reverse position or anything like that. That's a completely different story. Obviously in his last fight, Bill Algeo, he was able to defeat TJ Brown via submission round number 2. A good win for him. And then before that, he lost to Andre Fili via split decision, right? So again, another one of those fights where maybe some people thought it went to Algeo. And then before that, he defeats Herbert Burns, KO, and then Joe Anderson Brito via unanimous decision. And he kind of has the similar thing going on there where, against Ricardo Ramos, he loses twice. And then against Andre Fili, he loses. Not too bad of a losses though. Like, it's not like he got finished by Ricardo Ramos, and it's not like he got finished by Andre Fili. So I would say Algeo is a pretty solid fighter. He is 4-3 in the UFC though, and then Hernandez is 6-5. So I think for Algeo, prepare to defend the takedowns, make it a grueling fight, and that's another thing I think he can do well here is really start trying to light him up on the feet, putting together just combination after combination. And maybe he's not going to knock him out or anything like that, but I think Algeo can have that pace and just stay in his face. It's very tough, eat a lot of his shots. He can reverse some of those takedowns, possibly. The grappling situations, could get on top, could look for a submission if he does get taken down. I think he obviously has cardio to make it a war for Bill Algeo. He's going to stay in there. He's going to trade, right? He's going to stay right in front of your face. And a lot of these, like I said, his striking is a lot of pop shots. So he just wants to he's always putting something out there. He's always throwing something at you. And then for Alexander Hernandez, I think he could start to gas a little bit because he might have some good power. Obviously, we've seen him. But I think if he's getting popped in the head and he's not able to get those takedowns going, it could be a little bit of a problem with him because I don't think Algeo is going to fight at that pace like Jim Miller. I feel like Algeo will, like, even if he's getting hit, he's in your face, he's going to try to break you down. He's going to try to make it ugly. And then, like I said, if he's able to defend any of the takedowns, reverse positions, even if just make it grueling in the clinch, whether it just kind of go back and forth with control, I think Algeo can just make this fight ugly unless he's getting taken out. But I just feel like he's not going to get knocked out here. Hernandez does absorb a lot of shots as well. Again, he will land some pretty good shots, some decent combinations, but at the same time, he will eat some of those shots. And if he's eating a lot of shots and Algeo keeps going and going and going, like just nature of like damage, I guess you could say, just how much each guy is taking damage. I feel like if both guys are exhausted or whatever, I would pick Algeo to be the guy who's still landing the better shots. So for me, I think it's going to be a close fight. It could be a back and forth one a little bit, but I think as the rounds go on, especially into the third round, and then to get to a decision, I think you're going to have Algeo kind of just land the better shots and just have the more volume, and he'll be the aggressor. Even if he's getting tagged up, he may be each some shots to give some shots, but I still think he'll be the one to be pressing forward in his face, and just it'll look better to the judges. So for me, I'm going to go Bill Algeo to defeat Alexander Hernandez. I'll take him to win by decision. In the second fight on the main card, we have Drew Dober, 26-12 in 1 no contest, taking on Aoriqileng, 22-7-2 in a lightweight bout. So for Drew Dober, coming into this fight with a loss in his last one, unfortunately for him, against Matt Frevola, where his little technique of kind of just rushing a guy, being super aggressive, getting in their face, and just swinging wildly, because I think he kind of relies on his chin to hold up, and then obviously his power is really good. So he gets in, closes that distance, and just starts winging it. And it was working a little bit, but then he just got absolutely flatlined and taken out on that one. So that's not always going to work. And we saw that against Bobby Green too, right? Bobby Green's winning the fight basically, and then Drew Dober comes back, lands one shot, puts him down. Rafael Alves gets that KO TKO against Terrence McKinney, kind of comes back, right? Gets that KO TKO. So these are the things that are a little bit concerning just because I'm not sure Aoriqileng's going to be able to take advantage of Drew Dober. If he's rushing in crazy, he might get overwhelmed. He might get dropped. He might get taken out like he did against Chris Asiagos. I don't think Drew Dober is going to be shooting in for 11 takedowns like he did against Grant Dawson. So although that was a pretty good draw, at least against someone like Grant Dawson, I think that was more of as long as Glenn was able to defend some of those takedowns. So it's a different type of fight, right? He's not really going to have to defend 20. He's not going to have to defend 20 different takedowns from Drew Dober, in my opinion. And I'm not sure if Drew Dober is going to go after the same kind of tactic. Maybe he's like, I'm going to overwhelm this guy, give him zero space, and then I'm going to take him out. And that could work. Aoriqileng could get overwhelmed in this one. But at the same time, maybe Glenn's able to take advantage of that lack of defense. And that's if Drew Dober is fighting that same way that he did every other time, right? Maybe he noticed like, oh, damn, I was on a roll, rushing these guys, and then I get taken out. And so maybe Drew Dober tries to slow it down, get a little bit more patience, look for the big shots instead of just running in there with his defense down. And then that might be harder for Aoriqileng to work around because Drew Dober's still loading up on shots, but he's really being technical about which ones he's throwing. And so Glenn's going to have a hard time with the pressure, and then he might get caught. Like he gets clipped and then he gets put down. So yeah, I think Glenn, if he lets go a little bit more, maybe he's going to be able to put up some good volume on him. But it's going to have to be one of these things where Glenn's just going to have to survive early on and then really pick him apart as the fight goes forward. Defend any takedowns if he needs to, reverse position, anything like that. But I think Drew Dober, he's going to go in there. He's going to try to close off that distance. He's going to be aggressive. Hopefully he keeps it a little bit less crazy and then picks the shots. But I think Dober should win this fight. I think he should clip him, and I think he puts him down and gets back in the win column and kind of forgets about that Matt Frevola fight. But again, if Dober's getting a little bit too crazy and Glenn's able to back up, pop, maybe he does catch him. But I'm going to go Drew Dober on this one. I just feel like the aggression, I think that style, it's a good style. And I feel like if he cuts off the octagon for Aoriqileng, he's just going to get in his face and, we're going to see basically what Chris Asiagos did against Ricky Glenn in this last fight. So I'm going to go Drew Dober to defeat Ricky Glenn. I'm going to take him to win by KO TKO in round number 1. In the third fight on the main card, we have Alex Morono, 23-8 and 1 no contest, taking on Joaquin Buckley, 16-6 in a welterweight bout. So this is an interesting fight because I think it's one of those ones where I'm either going to go with the wrong guy, absolutely, he's going to get absolutely annihilated and it'll just look bad, or you go with the guy who plays the fight technical and is able to win a pretty good decision, and then it's like, whoa, I guess he shut down the other guy. It's like no other way around it, right? I think Alex Morono isn't going to knock out Joaquin Buckley, but I feel like he could possibly outwork him. So that's interesting to see if that is going to be the one to happen. So Alex Morono coming off a win over Tim Means, was able to get that submission around number 2. Pretty good win for him, 2 takedowns in that one. We saw what Tim Means did in his last fight. So Tim Means isn't necessarily out of the game. He was on a 3-fight winning streak, and then he defeats Andre Fialho. But I think that was a pretty good win against someone like Tim Means. Before that, he loses Santiago Ponzinibbio in a fight that, unfortunately, I felt like he was doing really decent in, right? He was kind of tagging him up, had moments of success, and then he gets taken out. That's unfortunate because he was on a 4-fight winning streak. Donald Cerrone, David Zawada, Mickey Gall, Matthew Semmelsberger, loses to Santiago Ponzinibbio. So he could have been on a 6-fight winning streak, and then he beats Tim Means. I think Morono's another one of these guys who's kind of just always be floating around in the middle of the division, taking on newcomers, taking on old comers. Like, he's always going to be that gatekeeper kind of guy. I don't think he's ever going to be able to fight for a title, but he will be able to kind of float around in there. And I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's really, really technical. Loads up on that right hand, the overhand right, really can generate some power there. Has obviously submission skills. Possibly land a takedown, probably not the guy diving in for takedowns. 50% takedown defense, so not necessarily the best takedown defense, but he can, I think, bounce around a lot on his feet, right? So he's always moving. He's always trying to set up some of those shots, going for the kicks, head kicks, leg kicks, body kicks. So he's always moving around, and I think he could put up some volume on someone if they're a little bit too stagnant as far as their fighting stance or how they're just in the octagon. If they're only looking for the knockout, he could definitely move around you, put up some good numbers. So we'll see if he's able to do that here. For Buckley, he's coming into this fight against a win over Andre Fialho, where he TKO'd him in round number 2 via kick. Just unfortunately for Fialho, he just starts eating too many shots and then gets put away. Buckley did land 2 takedowns in that fight, and so that's the other thing here too, right? Is if Buckley decides to start going in for takedowns, Morono's really gonna have to either just keep that distance or he's gonna have to get back up, right? Because if he's constantly having to deal with that, I mean, maybe it tires out Buckley too, but we've seen Morono slow down as well. Before that, he loses to Chris Curtis via KO TKO in round number 2, just out of nowhere, really, just got taken out in that one. Was actually putting up some good numbers on him. Against Nasruddin Imavov, he lost that fight via unanimous decision. Imavov was able to land 2 takedowns in that one and also go for 2 submission attempts. So before that, he beats Albert Duraev. Abdul Razak Alhassan, split decision. Gets takedowns in a lot of these fights too. So he can definitely wrestle Buckley. I think obviously he'll be the one that, if anything, is the one going in for the clinch or the one for the wrestling, the takedowns. He does concern me a little bit because I think he does generate a lot of power, but I do think he can be clipped. It hasn't necessarily happened against Fialho. Obviously Chris Curtis was able to get him. Didn't happen against Imavov. He was able to drop Duraev. He's kind of been, I don't know. He got taken out by Alessio Dietrico via that kick. I feel like he can be one-shot KO'd, is what I'm saying. It's just a matter of if he's really able to implement his like wrestling and then his pressure. I feel like that's really when he starts doing well. If he's not able to if he's meeting somebody who's really going to come forward or make it hard for him to get a hold of them, then that's when he starts to struggle a little bit. So Chris Curtis, I think, was just willing to trade with him and stay right and close, and he was able to get that KO TKO against Imavov. Imavov's the one that's wrestling, right? So Imavov lands 2 takedowns, and then Buckley can't land 3, so he faces like a better grappler. And then against guys where he's able to kind of just rush him, I guess you could say, he absolutely crushes Duraev. Abdul Razak Alhassan, he wins that fight via split decision. Ironically enough, though, Alhassan gets 3 takedowns, and then Buckley gets 5. Against Antonio Arroyo, he ends up getting that KO TKO in round number 3. He also lands 1 takedown. Even against, well, Alessio Di Chirico just got taken out. So, I mean, he is dropping dudes in the fight that he's winning. So he's kind of one of these guys where I feel like he is athletic. He can go out there and he can definitely dominate. But I don't know, man. I just feel like Morono, like I said, Morono's either going to get absolutely destroyed here, or like I feel like he could win like a decision if he's able to defend some of those takedowns, and maybe he lights Buckley up a little bit and they both are tired. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's more of a close fight until it isn't close, I guess, till Morono gets flatlined. But yeah, I would say the safe pick here would be Joaquin Buckley. But I don't know, Morono, I picked him before when he wasn't supposed to win or when he wasn't really favored or whatever. And then he's won. I think I probably picked him against, I don't know if I picked him against Pettis. Yeah, I think he's good. I think Alex Morono's good. I like that he bounces around a lot, so like he can kind of keep out of. He's not gonna just start trading with Buckley back and forth. I don't think, obviously, and then he's also gonna have to get out of the way of the takedowns. But Morono, if he makes this a frustrating fight, if he makes Buckley chase him, right? Maybe he walks Buckley into something, and that's the other thing. It's only gonna take like 1 or 2 drops, maybe. Buckley starts to be a little hesitant as far as that. And you can walk in, like I think a lot of people are probably expecting Buckley to knock out Morono, which again I've said that could definitely happen, but Buckley could, I feel like, also get a little bit crazy with it and then just rush in, think he's gonna land that big shot, and then boom, Morono clips him, makes it an interesting fight. So it's a hard one. It's a hard one just because I feel like Morono is one of those guys where you start counting him out. Buckley, maybe he gets in there, gets a little overconfident, and he gets clipped. Or Morono, who knows? Maybe Buckley goes in for a takedown. Morono's able to defend it with a submission. He's over there submitting him. But we'll have to see what happens in this one. But I'm actually gonna go with the underdog. I'm gonna go with Alex Morono to defeat Joaquin Buckley. I'll take him to win by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we have Joe Pyfer 11-2 taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan 12-5 in a middleweight bout. So Joe Pyfer is obviously coming in. Got a lot of, I guess you could say, hype behind him, right? Coming off 2 wins in his last fight. More notably, he was able to defeat Gerald Meerschaert. And honestly, Meerschaert is one of those guys that give it to people, and he either submits them or he gets taken out. So, good win for Pyfer just because he had to beat him, right? He had to beat him to get to that next level. Dana White Contender Series, though, unironically against Dustin Stolfus. In August 11th of 2020, he gets KO TKO'd in round number 1, but he comes back in the next one against Ozzy Diaz, and then he's able to get that KO TKO in round number 2. So let's forget about that first fight. And then he goes into the UFC, right? He defeats Alan Amedovski by KO TKO in round number 1. Yeah, he gets the knockdown. And then against Gerald Meerschaert, he takes him out. Now, what I will say about Pyfer is, to me, he doesn't seem like one of these guys who obviously has power, but he seems like one of these guys who is going to set it up at least. He's going to be a little bit more technical. He's not just swinging shots hoping he knocks someone out. He's definitely trying to set it up. He can put together some good combinations, and that's what you like to see. Because some of these guys, they get overhyped because they land one shot and they KO someone. But then when the fight starts getting a little bit tough, when you have to go to a decision, maybe the guy's not getting KO'd right off the bat, then you see them start to get tired, and they're just, they're not stringing together combinations. They're still looking for that one shot. They have horrible takedown defense. They're getting taken down, right? So that's the thing, right? Is what are we going to see from Joe Pyfer if Alhassan takes him deep, right? Maybe he takes him deep, but or both guys kind of just gas out a little bit. You have Alhassan who hurts him, right? Who knows? But that's my thing. I feel like Pyfer looks like one of those fighters, though, that's going to be making those drastic improvements, and who also, yes, he is hype behind him because he's KOing people, but at the same time, it looks to me as if he's probably going to have a little bit more than just landing one big shot, right? I think he can definitely string together some good combinations. Who knows if his takedowns are going to be able to be good here. I don't think Alhassan's going to be able to take him down unless Pyfer makes a big mistake where he just doesn't see it coming, and then Alhassan takes him down. But I think for the most part, Pyfer might even be trying to go for a takedown if he's unable to get that KO TKO early. I think Pyfer also has pretty good distance control, again, which goes back to him being more technical. He's not just trying to swing big shots, hope for the best. He's really trying to pick apart his opponent and hurt them very bad with every shot. For Razak Alhassan, 6-5 in the UFC, unfortunately has not had the best of runs as of late, even though he's coming off of a win in his last one via KO TKO run number 2. The thing about Alhassan is I feel like when he paces himself, it's the greatest thing. So he always tries to go for like a big shot early on, right? He's going to try to take your head off. That works if he's able to take you out, right? And I think even in some of his striking, when you see him throw those big hooks or whatever, it just doesn't look contained. It looks very wild. And against someone like Pyfer, who, again, if he's distance management, right? He sees this guy coming in crazy, oh, big shots. Pyfer could, he scoots back just a little bit, pop, 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 lights you up, clips you. That's the difference. Because I feel like Alhassan, yeah, of course, if he lands one of these big kicks, if he lands one of these if he lands a big knee, if he lands a big overhand, if he clips you, gets you in close and clips you with a big hook, yeah, of course he can put you down. One shot, that's all it takes. But someone that's expecting that, someone that has a little bit more technical striking, who's not going to just start, trading back and forth or have a better bit of a defense, distance management, Pyfer could see that chaos, back up, pop, pop, maybe goes to the body, give him different looks, and then you're over here, Alhassan's trying to take your head off, and then he's exposed, and that's when Pyfer takes you out. So that's my thing here. It's like Pyfer doesn't give me that vibe of like being reckless, I guess you could say. So I think he's gonna obviously anticipate Alhassan coming in here, trying to take his head off, and maybe even going for a takedown, like who knows. But at the same time, I still feel like Alhassan, as the fight goes on, the worse he starts getting, he's getting gassed out, right? If he fights a little bit more cautious, if he fights a little bit more patience, I think he actually do really well. But he doesn't have those, he gets a little bit excited when he hurts you or something, and he rushes in, he's crazy, and he's trying to land those hard shots. And just against like someone like Pyfer, unless he looks absolutely horrible in this fight, I feel like he'll be able to manage it. And then he'll be able to start lighting him up with his own shots. And the moment Pyfer wobbles Alhassan, I just feel like, again, he's not gonna just rush in there like a crazy person and start being on skates and then he gets clipped. I just don't see that happening. Has to be very careful early on though. At the end of the day, it's a fight. Alhassan could definitely kill him. Like that could obviously happen. But for the most part, I think again, Pyfer is just gonna be way too technical on the feet. Maybe even be able to go in for a takedown or something and then mix it up that way. And if it does go later and Pyfer's managing his power, managing his energy, I'm going to count on him versus a guy who's going to start gassing out because he's just trying to throw big shots. Unless Alhassan patient, he stays patient. He's like looking at it. Who knows? But for me, I'm going to go Joe Pyfer to defeat Razak Alhassan. I'm going to win by round 1. KO TKO. In the main event of the evening, we have Grant Dawson 21-1 taking on Bobby Green 30-14-1 in a lightweight bout. So this is a pretty controversial main event. I guess people are mad about it. I mean, yeah, sure. It's definitely not the most ideal main event that we've seen, but we've seen worse, I think, especially for a Vegas card, just throwing these cards together. But regardless, you have Grant Dawson basically undefeated, as you could say, in the UFC. I mean, he is undefeated, at least in the UFC, only drawing to Ricky Glenn, who's also fighting on this card. But in that one, it was just, I mean, for me, it was just more of him being able to, like Ricky Glenn being able to defend the majority of his takedowns, right? So he only lands 3 out of 11. Low volume guy, at least on the feet. I think Grant Dawson has enough to get by on the feet, but again, it's more so to set up the takedowns and then get his grappling going. It's nothing crazy. Like if you look on the feet, both of these guys, I mean, Bobby Green by 5,000 miles, right? Bobby Green can definitely, if it was a boxing match, I'm taking Bobby Green because he's going to just light this dude up. That being said, obviously Bobby Green has had moments where he gets a little, that's his style, where he starts having his hands down. He did that against Drew Dober, where he's basically got a little bit cocky and then he gets absolutely destroyed in a fight that he was winning. So that's just unfortunately his style. Against Jared Gordon, the eye poke, I believe, or I forget what it was. I think it might have been an eye poke. No contest, unfortunate. Probably would have started lighting Jared Gordon up on the feet a little bit more. So against Tony Ferguson, albeit it's against Tony Ferguson, 137 significant strikes to Tony Ferguson 54. Honestly, though, I feel like when guys start even landing on Bobby Green, it's just because he's doing his hands down thing. Like, he just kind of likes to fight that way, and that does leave, I think, a little bit of a percentage for his opponents to clip him. So even Tony Ferguson, I think, was able to touch him a little bit, nothing crazy, but obviously Bobby Green, for the most part, was able to just light him up. And then when it got to the floor, right, you get into that submission exchange, you have Bobby Green being the one to get the arm triangle. So I don't expect to see anything like that happen here. It's there, but I really don't think we're going to see Bobby Green submit Grant Dawson. Now, like I've said, Bobby Green, he's coming in this fight with some of his fights where, he might have been able to beat Jared Gordon. He might have been able to beat Drew Dober if he would have not started getting a little bit cocky, but that's his style. So maybe you look at this as like he's coming off 3 wins. Like in the multiverse, he has 3 wins. So he loses to Islam Makhachev on short notice, which, okay, who cares? He beats Nasrat Kakbaras, unanimous decision, significantly outstrikes him. That's a good win for him. Alaya Quinta, KO TKO, round number 1, good win for him. Loses to Rafael Fiziev in a good fight where he was back and forth, both guys. He outstrikes him, and he still loses via unanimous decision. He loses to Thiago Moises, unanimous decision, but he outstrikes him, and he actually gets 2 takedowns of his own. So when you look at Bobby Green, like, he's hanging in there. It's not like this dude's getting flatlined every fight. Like, he's fought the best guys. Didn't work against Drew Dober, right? Unfortunately has to take on Makhachev with like weeks notice or whatever. And then against Jared Gordon, unfortunate, we didn't really get to see a fight happen. So Bobby Green is very tough. Now, the concern that I have here, though, is that you look at Grant Dawson, and yeah, on the feet gets absolutely destroyed. But his ability to keep coming with those takedowns and just come, he's going to take you down. He's going to smother you on the floor. Maybe he's going to be able to get a finish. But for the most part, a 5-round fight, just having those setups to where he's just constantly being in your face, taking you down on the feet. He lands something, and it just like you're so worried about getting taken down because now you're defending, 12 takedowns. You're trying to defend the next one coming, and then you get clipped on the feet just because he found a way to. His striking isn't necessarily the best, but you're so consumed and worried about getting taken down that, oh shit, and then you get clipped on the feet or something. And then even on the ground, the dude's looking for submissions. Like, he's just trying to find a submission after submission after submission. And it's just smothering, ground and pound. And so this is one of those fights where Bobby Green has 74% takedown defense. I don't think he's going to get taken down like 12 times, in my opinion. But the thing that I do think could happen is Grant Dawson gets 3 takedowns, and then he controls them, maybe like 1 takedown, and then you don't see Bobby Green get back up. And Dawson's looking for the submission or whatever. But I think, honestly, unless Bobby Green gets badly hurt, I feel like Bobby Green could defend himself on the floor against Grant Dawson. And like I said, maybe Grant Dawson's controlling him against the fence in the clinch, and it's just all the grappling exchanges. Bobby Green's just unfortunately losing, but Bobby Green does light him up. Maybe he'll light him up enough to make it competitive to the judges, but at the same time, again, I think Grant Dawson is going to be that guy just weighing on him. And when he gets that takedown, maybe he does get a finish, Grant Dawson, but Bobby Green's pretty tough. It could just be that control time that's an issue. And you have one of those situations where Bobby Green loses the fight, even though he like lit him up, basically. You could have one. Yeah. I mean, like against Thiago Moises, for example, he landed 85 significant strikes in comparison to Moises's 42. So but he still loses the fight via unanimous decision. So I could see something like that where Bobby Green outstrikes him, lands more shots, but Grant Dawson's taking him down for the majority of the round and, transitioning on him to get submissions. And it just looks better that he's been able to do that, where on the feet, Green hasn't been able to really hurt him, and especially the way that Green fights with the hands down and all that. Like, unfortunately, I feel like sometimes that just doesn't look good. So if Dawson's doing more damage on the floor, even if he's not crushing him or anything like that, it could still look better. And it's not to say too that maybe the ground and pound for Dawson will work. Maybe he will control him dominantly on the floor and he'll be able to finish him. But we'll have to see how that one plans out. Could be a really competitive fight. Maybe I'm wrong here. Actually, initially was going to take Bobby Green just because I felt like his striking was going to be a lot better, which obviously I think it is. But then I started thinking like, man, it could be one of those cases where he does kind of light him up on the feet, but then Dawson's just able to control him on the floor, and the judges give it to Dawson. And again, I do think, that being said, it's not like every single fight that Dawson has is via decision. So I think he does work for a little bit more of the finishes than some of these guys do. You look at somebody's record and they've got like 10 wins all by unanimous decision. In each fight they've had like 10 takedowns or whatever. Dawson, I think, will at least on the ground, I'm not expecting him to do anything on the feet, but on the ground, he's definitely going to look for those submissions. And again, submission attempts, all that, that'll help him win the decision. So I'm going to go Grant Dawson. Hope it's a competitive fight, but I'm going to go Grant Dawson to defeat Bobby Green by decision. So that'll do it, guys, for my UFC Vegas 80 main card predictions for the upcoming event taking place this Saturday, October 7th, 2023. Leave your comments down below. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Let me know who you got in the main event, Grant Dawson or Bobby Green. And I'll see you guys in the next video.